we talk all things movies, television, streaming originals, and everything in between. This podcast is, of course, a complimentary podcast to the YouTube channel of the same name, All Things Watched, where over there we actually sit down and watch some of our favorite content while also reviewing movies and all the good stuff and all that stuff, movie reviews, television reviews, whereas over here on the podcast is where we have our longer format conversations, and typically in an open spoiler format. So, if you have not seen episode 4 of Secret Invasion, then I highly recommend you go watch it before listening to this podcast, because in this podcast today, we are going to be talking about episode 4 of Secret Invasion, and we will absolutely be ruining it for you if you haven't seen it. So head on over and check it out, and then come back and listen to the podcast. Now, episode 4 of Secret Invasion was titled Beloved, and honestly, this was my favorite episode of the show so far. Now, this episode has an awesome opening sequence, which was actually pretty predictable, and really it was because they actually sort of ruined it in the trailers. But in the opening sequence here, it shows Gaia coming back to life with the extremists, and while she comes back to life, while she is reviving, it actually shows it's almost like a montage where she's healing and coming back to life in the present day, but while also it shows us sort of a flashback of the sequence of why she's coming back, and it basically tells us that Gaia is officially a super Skrull. And of course, that, like I said, that was not really something crazy. It's not like that was some big revelation or anything. We knew that this was going to happen. Like I said, they sort of ruined that in the actual trailers anyways, because there was a scene in the trailer where Gaia was surrounded by all of this white stuff. And of course, we knew that that white stuff was the machine that would turn the Skrulls into super Skrulls, and that's basically everything that happens up to the title card of the opening sequence. It's Gaia reviving. We see the Extremis being used, her body basically using that ability of Extremis, while simultaneously seeing the flashbacks of her becoming the Super Skrull. But like I said, that was super predictable, and I actually hope that Emilia Clarke sticks around in the MCU. I hope that this is not like a one-off, and given the fact that she is a Super Skrull now, I feel like she could be to great value to the Avengers. Between having knowledge of, the alien race that she comes from, she probably has a lot of knowledge from outer space, the cosmic side of Marvel. So I think it would be kind of silly if Marvel does not, take advantage of this, because honestly, Emilia and her character, Gaia, was really underutilized so far in Secret Invasion. In fact, that was probably one of my biggest complaints of this series so far, was how little they actually used Gaia. And but of course, we know by the end of this episode, that Gaia's character will become extremely important, given the fact of how this episode ends with Talos, which also was very predictable, because to some degree they sort of ruined that in the promotional trailers as well. Excuse me. But it was still really fun and really interesting to see it all unfold, and to see this episode unfold with the fate of Talos, what happens to him, and then of course the fate of what happens to Emilia Clarke and her character. So like I said, all the opening sequence is just Emilia basically coming back to life, and then it was revealed that she is the Super Skrull. And then so the first thing that we get to then right after the title credit, or the title card, Secret Invasion, is basically a flashback. We then go back to 2012, and I think it's specifically Paris, I believe is where it was. It was Paris 2012, and it shows Nick Fury and his beloved wife there at that point in time. Now, we know, of course, she is a Skrull, but it's hard to know really at this point if Fury knows that she's a Skrull and whatnot at this point. I'm under the impression that he never ever knew that she was a Skrull, but I could be wrong. Maybe she did know. Maybe he did know. Sorry, but with the way this episode ends up playing through, I was sort of under the impression that he didn't know. But like I said, I could be completely wrong about that. But it was just a really nice scene of showing them and their love, and how much they were in love. And I guess you could say, early parts of their relationship, almost how they, sort of, not necessarily how they met, but, definitely the early stages, the stepping stones, we'll say, of them going into the relationship. And of course, she shows Fury a newspaper clip, or newspaper, just a newspaper in general, and the newspaper, of course, has the Avengers, posting on the front page there. Of course, like we said, 2012 was when the first Avengers movie came out, so I just thought it was really cool and a great way of linking Secret Invasion into the greater, mythology of the MCU. So I thought that was really creative from the writer's perspective, and for the writing of the show. And I thought it was really appropriate as well, because it sort of shows Fury, post Avengers, I guess, so to speak, after the first Avengers movie. It shows that he went to Paris, and of course he's meeting with this. I can never remember her name. Hang on, I got IMDb opened here to see if it tells me her name. Is her name Priscilla? I believe her name is Priscilla. So yeah, Priscilla is Fury's wife. Priscilla. Yeah, okay, that's all it says there. It just says Priscilla. Now, something else I find very interesting here, I see that Colby Smulders is credited for 5 episodes, but I don't really know why, because she's hardly even in the movie, unless, in the series, unless they're crediting her because maybe she's like a producer or something like that. That's probably why they're crediting her, sorry. But then, anyways, then it comes back to modern day, and it comes back to modern day, and it shows Priscilla then in a church, and she is actually talking to then, of course, Don Cheadle's character Rhodey, who of course is War Machine. And of course, we know, anyways, that Rhodey in this series is already a Skrull, and of course, we know that Priscilla is a Skrull. So it shows them meeting at this church, and basically, Rhodey, or at least the Skrull version of Rhodey. I'm not 100% sure if he's actually Gravik. I don't think it's actually Gravik, but he is definitely still someone, a very powerful Skrull nonetheless, because it seems like he's in a very powerful position, and it also seems like he holds a pretty high position with the Rebel Skrulls and with Gravik as well, especially towards the end of this episode, because Gravik doesn't really act on him. If you get what I'm saying, Gravik doesn't kill him, doesn't kill this Skrull. So it seems like Gravik, he's not only high up in the ranks in terms of authority because he took over Colonel Rhodes, but also he's very high in Gravik's rebellion authority as well. So here at this meeting between Rhodey and Priscilla, he tells Priscilla that she is going to have to step up now and basically eliminate Nick Fury and kill him. But of course, at this point, she has most likely, at least, probably very likely, has actually truly fallen in love with Nick Fury. We know that oftentimes when these Skrulls take over bodies, they actually take over the memories as well. And in the comics, as far as I know, in some cases, they actually forget that they're Skrulls, and they get so lost in their performance, and they get so lost with taking on somebody else's identity, that they actually become the person, just because they sort of forget the fact that they're a Skrull. Because once they've retained the memories after so long, if they stay, if they keep playing that character for such a long period of time, they really become the character. And I have a feeling that this is sort of what happens to Priscilla, and they don't really show that in this episode. Like, that's not something that they say or give away or even allude to, for that matter. Well, they do sort of allude to it, but I do feel like she truly does care about Nick Fury, and I do think that she really loves her husband. At least that's the impression that I got. Maybe I'm misinterpreting it. Maybe you're watching this and you say, no, she is totally bad right from the get-go. But for me, in my perspective, I think that I really do think that she really loved Nick Fury, and I thought that she really cared about him and really cared for him. And I definitely know that she will not kill Nick Fury. Not only will she not kill him, but she won't even, want to, I don't even think that she has it in her to kill him. And so that sort of becomes a feud between her and the Skrull that's taken over Rhodey. But of course, while this whole meeting and conversation is going on, Nick has her bugged and actually has sort of some kind of microphone, I guess, implanted in her jacket or in her coat, so he's able to hear the entire conversation. Or I would assume that's how he's hearing it. Then again, this is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He probably just has some form of advanced technology in which he can just hear through the walls. And now that I'm thinking about it, that's actually probably more likely. It's probably more likely that he can just hear through the walls. But either way, he now knows that both Priscilla and Rhodey are Skrulls. Now, if you can remember back to, I believe it was the post-credit scene, I believe it was, for Avengers Infinity War, we see in that post-credit scene of Infinity War, we actually see Nick Fury and also Kobe Smolder's character Maria Hill, and they're driving away in this sort of in, I believe it was like in this car or whatnot, but that was before they actually got snapped away. Am I getting that right? Hang on. No, it actually was not Infinity War, because in Infinity War, that's when they got snapped away. So it must have been a post-credit scene for something else. Maybe Spider-Man No Way Home, or Far From Home. Either way, it was. I can't remember exactly which movie it was. At first, I thought it was Infinity War, but now I'm thinking that it was. It can't be Infinity War, because that's when they got snapped away. So it must have been before Infinity War, when it was Maria Hill and Nick Fury driving in the car, and it was revealed that both of them were Skrulls at that time, because the real Nick Fury was up in the satellite or that headquarters that's sort of floating around the Earth. That was what they call Sword, I believe it was, or maybe they called it something else in the MCU, but typically it's Sword. It's supposed to be like the Sword headquarters. But either way, the point of me saying that is that in the vehicle on Earth, there was two people, or two Skrulls, that were impersonating Nick Fury and Maria Hill, which is why I still am not totally convinced that Maria Hill is actually dead, and I'm also not totally convinced that we're still following the same Nick Fury. This still very well could be a Skrull version of Fury, especially considering the fact that he's actually married to a Skrull here. So even though his reaction seems very real, even though they are alluding to the fact that this is the real Nick Fury, and that he's now feeling all these emotions because he feels betrayed, it still doesn't mean necessarily that he's not a Skrull. He could be a Skrull, but maybe he feels that betrayal because by hearing this conversation, he thinks that now his wife is actually working for Gravik, and maybe he thinks now that she's bad and that she is turned over to Gravik's side. Now, I could be totally wrong about that. I'm just speculating. That's 100%, me geeking out over theories and what things that could happen. But, something tells me that Marvel won't go that route, and they won't go that far. I always hope that Marvel would go, to certain levels and really push these stories and really go crazy with all these awesome stories. But very rare does Marvel actually really go all that far with these things, especially with the multiversal saga. Well, actually, having said that, I was always someone that sort of, if I'm going to be honest with you, I have openly and even publicly sort of criticized the multiversal saga with Marvel, specifically because of the opportunities that they've missed. Now, they have done some multiversal projects really well. Like, I think season 1 of Loki, at least for me, was one of my favorite series of all time. Not my most favorite, but one of my favorite. I think Loki is right up there with WandaVision, and I personally really liked Moon Knight too. I didn't like the finale, but I still loved the other 5 episodes. I thought it was one of the best Disney Plus series that they did. And now, of course, Secret Invasion. I'm actually really enjoying Secret Invasion, especially after this episode. This is my favorite episode of Secret Invasion now thus far, and this is really the MCU going full throttle. And if you ask me, the amount of special effects and action at the end of this episode, I thought was just phenomenal. I thought they did an absolute stand-up job with this episode. But getting back to the multiversal part, I was someone that was criticizing Marvel and criticizing the multiverse because I just felt like it was such a waste. I feel like they wasted so much opportunity, especially with projects such as, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I just kept thinking to myself, like, why didn't they have Doctor Strange go to, and he didn't even have to interact with the universes. He could have they could have just thrown it into that multiversal montage that they had, or they could have shown him going through, like, the Spider-Man universes, and show him go through the Fox X-Men universes, show him go to the other, Daredevils, or go to the Netflix universe, or go, to the Runaways, or to Hellstrom, or to, all these different types of, or, Cloak and Dagger, or even Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for that matter. So I've always felt like, or even the Inhumans. So I've always felt like maybe the multiversal saga, I felt like it was a little, underutilized. I just felt like there was so much that they could have done with it, and I was very criticizing of that, overall, especially, like I said, publicly. But now, after seeing this series, when I really think about it, and actually in the real world now, with all the Deadpool leaks coming out, the pictures of Deadpool with, Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman reprising their roles as Wade Wilson and Logan, coming back as Deadpool and Wolverine, and then we see, Wolverine actually donning the yellow suit. It really made me stop and think and actually appreciate the multiverse saga a little bit more, because I didn't really think about the fact that, well, the multiverse has always existed. Because even though Doctor Strange didn't go to those versal universe, even though we didn't get to see, X-Men and Doctor Strange, at least not yet, even though we didn't get to see all these different cameos, when we really think about it, the multiverse is already in effect, because the X-Men are basically canon now at this point because of the multiverse. So even though we haven't seen the cameos, the actual cameos, they are technically canon now to the MCU. So when I look at things that way now, and I, read the real life news articles about, like Jennifer Gardner potentially coming back as Elektra, in Deadpool, and those kind of things. It really makes me appreciate the multiverse a lot more now, because I sort of been thinking in the back of my mind, like, they haven't really done much with the multiverse. But then again, yes, they have, because we've already got a multiverse, considering the fact that Marvel never always owned the X-Men. They didn't always own Spider-Man. And then when we do get an awesome multiversal movie, something like Spider-Man No Way Home, then it really makes you appreciate the multiverse, and you're like, this is the multiverse. And then on the animated side, you have, well, you can basically include all the animation or whatever animated series you like. The 90s Spider-Man, you can canonize that. You have the Into the Spider-Verse trilogy, which I don't know if it's actually going to be a trilogy or if they'll break the third one up into two movies, but there will be at least a Spider-Verse trilogy. So it really takes that into appreciation. Then you have the Sony-verse with Venom, Morbius. Whether you love it or hate it, it's still, a different universe that has a vampire in there. We have Craven coming out very soon. And then you could go back even further. We have Blade, Wesley Snipes' Blade, 2003 Ang Lee's Hulk. Whether you like that movie or not, it was a great origin story. Even if you didn't like the movie, I thought at least it was a pretty cool origin to the Incredible Hulk. So you have all those. And so really, when you really think about it, plus the Netflix Daredevil and the Netflix Defenders and all these different projects, which technically are not hypothetically canon, they do all fall under the MCU now, under the multiversal banner. So I just wanted to get that little bit of a rant out. I guess it doesn't really involve Secret Invasion all that much, but just because we're talking about Marvel and talking about a project of Marvel, I do have to say I really appreciate the multiversal saga a lot more now, given the fact now that we do have all these X-Men movies, we do have all these Spider-Man movies, we do have the old Punisher movies and the old Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck, the Elektra movies, we have the Ghost Riders, we have all these movies which technically are canon now because they all fall under the multiversal saga. But anyways, getting back to Secret Invasion, episode 4, now that Fury has figured out, or now knows, that his wife is actually a Skrull. And the only reason why I say that is because a part of me wonders sometimes if Secret Invasion would not end up becoming something to do with the multiverse as well. How does this play into the greater MCU? Well, who knows? Maybe this is a different version of Earth that we have not yet been introduced to. I don't think that they're going to go that route, because I think they're going to try to keep the main MCU as simple as possible, and then just use all the other franchises that we just named. That will be the multiverse. A part of me thinks that maybe that's what they're doing. We did see some glimpses of it anyways with Doctor Strange. There were different variants, different versions of Doctor Strange. We've seen it with Wanda, different versions of the Scarlet Witch. Well, technically there's only one Scarlet Witch, but different versions of Wanda and whatnot. So, but you get what I'm saying. We did sort of see glimpses of it anyways. So a part of me wonders if those other projects, them itself, would become the multiverse. But anyways, Fury learns about his wife, and he learns about Rhodey. I think he already knew that stuff anyways. And then we come to the scene here where we see Gravik. Gravik is now landing into this new, into the airport and into this new spot and whatnot. And then we have this beautiful scene, which is probably one of my favorite scenes of probably the entire series, where we have Talos and Gaia sitting down next to each other on a park bench overlooking this beautiful view. And Talos obviously knows that Gaia made this tremendous sacrifice. He knows that Gaia is putting her life on the line, literally literally sacrificed her life because Gravik did already shoot her. He really did try to kill her, even though he didn't kill her. He did try to kill her, but she obviously survived because she's now a Super Skrull. But if she did not become a Super Skrull, she would have absolutely been killed. So I just really love this back and forth between Gaia and Talos, really, because of the fact that she has already made that sacrifice, and we know now after seeing the episode that by the end of this episode, Talos is going to end up making that exact same sacrifice. But of course, we know that his sacrifice is not going to end quite as well as what Gaia's did, because he simply does not have the ability to heal or recover, because he does not have that extremis part of him. The extremis is not in his body. He has not yet become a Super Skrull, or most likely he will not become a Super Skrull. I really do believe that he's dead now. I do not think that he's going to recover from this, but it was just such an amazing sacrifice. But like I said, this back and forth here, I really loved how he really tells her how much he loves her and how he's there for her, and all this good stuff. And she kind of says the same to him. And it was just really nice, because we haven't really seen a whole lot of that between them two, between their relationship. And I just thought it was really nice, really appropriate. And also, it was awesome to see Emilia Clarke acting and sort of bouncing off of Ben Mendelsohn, who I think are both great, grade A, class A actors, some of the best in the world, actually. Ben Mendelsohn is one of my favorite all-time actors. I truly do think he's one of the best. I think Emilia Clarke is one of the best. Whenever, the writing for her characters are good, in terms of acting, she's a grade A, class A performer. Just like pretty well all the cast in this one, in this series are, top of the line. The actor that plays Priscilla, Charlene Woodard, I believe that's how you pronounce her name, Woodard. She does a phenomenal job with her character. Absolutely no complaints there in terms of performance. And then, of course, in this scene, we get Fury and Priscilla, and basically he tells her the truth. He confronts her and tells her the truth, that he knows that she's a Skrull. And once again, this is also a very emotional, very heavy scene, because, they have an entire lifeline or lifetime together. And he's basically, looking at her and saying, hey, was any of this ever even real? Did you ever even really love me? Did you even really like me? And all that stuff, was any of it real? And they really have this, just like I said, this amazing banter back and forth. And, she basically says, she actually gives him a list. I believe it was like 3 things or something that she said that she would never do, or that she would do, or something. And she basically reveals to Fury that one of the things that is true, that she did not lie about, was her love for him. And it was just so cool to see that, because you really feel for Fury in this one. And once again, given the fact that he's not wearing the eye patch, it still makes me wonder if it's even really Fury, or if it's actually a Skrull. And that's one thing that Secret Invasion is doing a really good job with, keeping you wondering, because essentially that's the way it was in the series, or in the comics, sorry. You are constantly wondering, is this really a Skrull, or is this actually one of our heroes? We know Rhodey has been taken over, so the question is, who else has been taken over? And whatnot. So, like I said, really cool. And then, of course, this scene ends with both Priscilla and Nick Fury pulling their guns and hauling out their guns, and they actually basically take a shot at each other. And, of course, they obviously don't hit each other. They both miss. But I'm guessing that it was intentional. Either that, or they both moved. So, because they don't actually see them do it. They don't actually see it far off or shoot. But it seems to me, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm really not sure. Let me know if you guys know. If you know, let me know in the comment section, or let me know down below. Did they really try to shoot each other, or did they intentionally shoot next to each other? That is a good question, because they don't actually really show it. So it's possible that they both moved and ducked out of the way, but it's also possible that they just simply didn't really want to shoot each other. I'm going to think that because they truly loved each other, I think that they don't kill each other because they chose not to, just because of the fact that they really did love each other. So I don't think either of them would have wanted to take the other's life. Or you could say, given the fact that they're both so well trained and they're both such good fighters, maybe they were both able to dodge out of the way. I honestly don't know now that I'm thinking about it, and I actually watched this, and like I'm sort of watching these scenes while we're talking about it here on the podcast. I honestly don't know now if that really was, if that was intentional or not. Did they actually dodge it, or did they just choose not to kill each other for the simple fact of, for the simple fact of, you know, because they loved each other, they just simply did not want to kill each other. So then we come to this scene, and correct me if I'm wrong, I could be totally wrong, but we see this scroll in the shower, and we see the scroll that's going to become Rhodey. And I get the impression, and I could be completely wrong, but I get the impression that this scroll that's in the shower is a female scroll. So, like I said, I could be totally wrong, but I get the idea or the impression that this is a female scroll who is impersonating Rhodey. And a part of me also wonders if it might actually be Gaia. Is this actually Gaia who is impersonating Rhodey? And the only reason why I wonder that is because when she gets out of the shower, she sort of rubs her arms, and she's rubbing her arms, and she's, it's almost like she's like wondering, you know what I mean? It's almost like there's something wrong. So a part of me wonders if the scroll portraying Rhodey is actually Gaia, but now, and the reason why she rubs her arm is because she's now a super scroll. So, she's probably feeling the effects. She probably feels more powerful. But the only thing that I would have to wonder is why would she, do this? Why would she want to portray Rhodey? Why would she, sort of want to mislead, Nick Fury? Unless Fury is also a Skrull, and so he knows the truth, and he actually knows that that's really Gaia or something. I don't really know. I could be completely wrong. Maybe Rhodey is not actually Gaia. Maybe it's just another Skrull. But I don't know. I just got the impression that the Skrull that was in the shower was a female Skrull, and I just got the impression that it was probably Gaia, given the fact that she was a Super Skrull. Because I don't think that all the Skrulls are going to become Super Skrulls. I think Gravik will be, obviously, I think Gaia, and we may potentially see one or maybe two more become Super Skrulls, but I don't think everybody is going to be a Super Skrull. The only other Super Skrull that I could see happening would be if Nick Fury is actually a Skrull. Then I could see that version of the Skrull becoming a Super Skrull. But beyond that, I don't think anybody else would. But like I said, I'm starting to wonder if Gaia is not the one portraying Rhodey. But then again, like I said, what would be the reason behind it? What would be the reasoning behind it? Unless she did it to protect Rhodey or something like that, or I don't even really know. Maybe it's not Gaia. Now that I'm thinking about it, I just don't see how it would make sense in the overall story. But I do think that it is a female Skrull, and I do think that there was a reason why they showed the Skrull, sort of rubbing her hands, or either that, or maybe it's just a Skrull that's sort of tired of impersonating a human. Maybe the Skrull just wants to be, able to just walk around as a Skrull, as opposed to having to walk around as a human. So honestly, I'm not even 100% sure. So let me know your theories down below. Which Skrull do you think has taken over Rhodey? Do you think that it's a male or female Skrull? Not even that it matters, but it's just, did you get the same impression as I did? Do you think it's a female Skrull? Do you think that there's a small possibility or a small chance that Rhodey could actually be Gaia, and Gaia is actually, manipulating a couple different versions of humans, because she would be manipulating her own version, what she looks like as Gaia, as a human, but then also she would be manipulating Rhodey and actually look like what Rhodey looks like as a human. So I really don't know. So let me know if you guys have any theories about that, or if you guys have any comments or any theories, working theories about that. I honestly don't know now that I'm thinking about it. I actually only seen this whole series once. Well, not the whole series, but I only seen the 4 episodes once. Usually I watch Marvel. Honestly, I watch Marvel on repeat. Basically, I watch all phase 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and I watch them all. But except when I watch them, I include all the projects. I include all the Netflix shows. I include all the Hulu shows. I include, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., all the ABC shows, even the Inhumans. I include the Ghost Riders, the Daredevils, the Punishers, the 2003 Hulk, all the X-Men. I include all of those things when I'm watching the MCU. In fact, I I am thinking about dedicating an entire podcast to the way that I like to watch the MCU multiverse, because the way that I watch it, I think it's just really fun, it's really compelling, and it's a great way to include all the characters, and also a great way of having most of our favorite characters in all the phases, including Fantastic Four, including the Spider-Mans, including all the Hulks, even the 2003 Hulk, including the Blade trilogy, including all these projects, and all that good stuff, and all the different versions of Daredevil and all that stuff. So maybe I'll do a podcast referring to that and whatnot eventually. But anyways, let's get back to Secret Invasion. So then we continue on after we have that scene between Rhodey and, of course, Nick Fury. Basically, Nick Fury just calls him out, and he's like, hey, he knows that he's a Skrull, and he basically goes there looking for his job back. Now, given the fact that he goes back there looking for his job is another, to me at least, another indication that this is Fury that's actually potentially a Skrull and not actually Nick Fury. I just don't see Fury going back to beg for his job. It just doesn't make sense to me. To me, it's not in the characteristics. But like I said, maybe it is Fury, and he's just trying to get back on the good side. Maybe he's just trying to get a little bit more authority and get a little bit more power back to help him take down the Skrulls. Like I said, I am pretty lost with this one, because I don't really know who's who, and so it does make the theories be a little bit difficult, because you can make multiple theories that could go either way, but it's still fun theorizing. So then we see the president, and the president, of course, is getting on the plane, or just getting off the plane, I guess, from a destination, and of course he's talking to Rhodes. Now we know that this, of course, is going to be a setup, and which leads to what I think the greatest scene of the series so far, which is, of course, a non-stop action sequence. And this action sequence actually takes place for probably a good 7, 8, maybe even 9 minutes, and it's just non-stop action the entire time. And then, of course, was Rhodey, of course, being the undercover Skrull, basically, gives away the position of the president, and he actually tells Gravik. Gravik, of course, is up in the helicopter. Now, you've seen these scenes in the trailers. This is the scenes in the trailer when it shows the helicopters going towards the motorcade, and they shoot their missiles, and they start blowing up all the cars. Now, in the trailer, it alludes to the fact they try to make you think that Gravik is actually shooting at Nick Fury, but it's actually not. Nick Fury is not even here at this point, but he will come. He will show up. But at this point, it's only the president and, of course, Don Cheadle and the Skrull that is controlling Don Cheadle. So Gravik ends up coming in, and he ends up shooting the missiles at the motorcade, trying to get the president. I don't even think he wants to necessarily kill the president, not totally, at least not right away, not until he can get the memories of the president. But I do think that he wants to I do think that he wants to take over the president. I don't think it's just strictly he wants to kill the president. I think he wants to take over the president. Maybe have a Skrull, replace the president so that he can have all that power and authority. But then again, maybe he would want to kill the president as well, because it does seem like throughout this whole series, Gravik is trying to push towards World War III. So that is possible. Maybe he would rather just assassinate the president. But I do think that he would use the power of the president. So I do think that he would kill him, but I also think that he would take him over. I don't think that he would just kill the president and then that's it. I think if he were to kill the president, then he would want to use his abilities to become the president, becoming one of the most powerful people in the world with, some of the most powerful military and whatnot. And then I believe he would cause chaos, because then I think he would use that military power to sort of start bombing other nations like Russia and all that stuff. Really, which would really basically destroy humanity and create this dystopian apocalyptic future for humanity. And that's really where I see Gravik's plan. That's what I see for the future of what Gravik wants. He wants to turn humanity against itself by causing this war. But anyways, we get this amazing action sequence, and we see Talos, of course, and Fury. And also, by the way, considering this is a Disney Plus show, I did think that the CGI and the special effects were absolutely phenomenal. I thought they did a really, really good job with the CGI here. And I would not, I wouldn't change any of it at all. I thought the choreography was good. I thought thought the action sequence was good. I thought the filming was good. The directing and writing of this episode was done really, really well. So, of course, Fury is going around with a shotgun. And, of course, Fury also called in backup while he's here. And now we actually get to see a little bit more of the Super Scroll power. We get to see Gravik using his ability that he had basically infused in his DNA, where he's basically the same as Groot, where he can use his hand to stretch, and it actually looks like Groot too, which I thought was a little bit silly. I didn't think they had to actually make it look like Groot. They could have still had it so that it looked like himself. They still basically could have had Gravik be what he's like in the comics. He could have still basically had the same powers as the Fantastic Four without actually being the Fantastic Four. You know, they didn't have to actually make his arm look like a tree, like Groot, because, you know, he's not a tree, he's a scroll. So I thought that they could have done, you know, that a little bit differently, because why does Gravik need to look like a tree? All he did was infuse himself with some of the cells from Groot, or at least that species that Groot is. Well, actually, it is Groot, because they say that it's Groot. And also, how did he get that piece of specimen from Groot? You know, obviously that means he must have crossed paths with Groot before, unless it happened at the end of the first Guardians of the Galaxy, when Groot sort of sacrifices himself, and then, you know, and then actually, you know, when he sacrificed himself, then maybe that's when Gravik, you know, kind of swoops in and gets some DNA. Let me know. What do you think? How do you think Gravik ended up getting some of Groot's DNA? I would be curious to hear your thoughts on that. But for me, I just kind of look past it. I still think, you know, that they should have used the Fantastic Four DNA. Like I said, they did not need to show any pictures of the Fantastic Four. They could have just simply had their abilities. They could have even used their Fantastic Four names. They could have just said Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Woman, Pyro, and the Thing. Or they could have, you know, actually used their real life names without the pictures. Excuse me. They could have said Reed Richards. They could have said Sue Storm, Johnny Storm. You know, Ben, I believe his name was the Thing. Ben, I can never remember his last name, but I think they used to call him Big Ben or something like that. So I still don't really know why Marvel chose not to use the Fantastic Four. It still would have been a great way to sort of tease them, especially knowing that the Fantastic Four is coming in the future. And not only that, but also a great way, I think, to maybe push some more sales for the two Fantastic Four movies that are already out. You know, there's already two Fantastic Four movies that exist. Three, if you want to go really far back in time. But two of those actually has Chris Evans in those movies, the guy that plays Captain America. He's in there and portraying Pyro. And once again, as we were saying before, talking about the multiverse, another great way to expand the multiversal saga, because you have the same actor, Chris Evans, playing two completely different superheroes. He would be playing Captain America and then also Pyro. So, you know, I hope Marvel, you know, sees all this stuff and jumps on this stuff. You know, Kevin Feige is extremely smart when it comes to this stuff. I mean, he was able to map out the MCU and really, all in all, just create this, you know, massive cinematic universe that now that we have the multiverse, if you want to include everything that they've ever done, we're talking about well over 100 different projects. You know, when you include all of the projects, Netflix, Hulu, you know, when you include, you know, all the movies that are not technically canon to Sonyverse, all the different Sony versus the Fox universe, all the Fox movies, the Universal movies. You know, when you include all those movies, you know, there's well over 90 projects. You know, what I mean is when you also add up all the seasons as well. You know, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is what, is 9 seasons or 8 seasons, I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was, or 7 or 8 seasons. So, you know, that's 7 or 8 projects alone, which do directly tie into the MCU. You know, and also the Netflix series does as well. You know, you oftentimes hear people say, well, the Netflix Defenders were sort of off in their own universe, but that's actually not true, because when you look at Jessica Jones or even Luke Cage, the very first episode of Luke Cage talks about Thor and Captain America. So, you know, they are constantly referencing the Avengers, even though you don't ever actually see the Avengers Tower in the Netflix original, or in the Netflix universe. They do constantly talk about the Avengers, which is technically, you know, canon to their main MCU, because the main MCU is the only MCU where we've actually seen the Avengers so far. So you can make the argument that yes, the Netflix universe is in a different multiverse or in a different universe, excuse me, but you know, but they still reference or make references that do relate to the main 616 main universe. So, anyways, we get the action sequence. Gravik is basically wreaking havoc here on all of these, on all of these and all these poor defenders, basically, of the president, Air Force, or the Secret Service, plus Fury and his defensive team. And then we get to the just absolutely devastating scene when Gravik orders the soldiers to take out Talos. And there's a few reasons why this is so tough to watch and so emotional. For one, the moment he gets, and once again going back to the CGI, this episode did really good job with their special effects, because the moment that Gravik gets shot, he starts to turn back into a Skrull, and there's multiple scenes here when he's actually half Skrull and half human, and so obviously it's probably a combination between practical effects but also special effects, and it just looks so good. It was so well done. I really loved that scene because he is slowly but surely losing his life. He's bleeding out, and while also trying to save the president, because the Skrull is stronger than humans, so Fury wasn't strong enough, or quite strong enough, to get the window broken open. And not only that, but Fury has to sort of defend Talos as well. Fury is the one with the gun, and he's also the one that's really technically the trained agent. So he's there trying to protect the president. He's trying to protect Talos, while Talos is trying to use that strength to beat out the window, but he's struggling because he's shot and he is bleeding out. And it's just really, honestly, it was probably one of the most devastating scenes that we've seen in the MCU, probably since Infinity War, or maybe even since Avengers Endgame. I would put this sacrifice almost on par with Black Widow's sacrifice when she has to lose her life, or even Captain America. Captain America didn't really lose his life technically. I think that this was just as emotional as Black Widow, or even Iron Man, when he gives his life for the greater good. Now, of course, this is on a much smaller scale. Obviously we didn't have, a ton of movies to really get to, fall in love with Talos. But the little bit that we do see of him, given, Ben Mendelsohn's performance, I do think, for me at least, I feel like I've really connected with Talos. I absolutely loved him every time he's in any movies or in any of the projects. So for me, I found this scene very emotional, because I did connect with Talos. And I just thought it was so sad seeing him, slowly die while slowly transforming back to a Skrull. And then Fury, of course, orders somebody to basically take Talos to help him, and it turns out that the person that ends up helping, or picking Talos up in order to basically try to walk him away from the battle, it turns out that it ends up actually being Gravik, and of course Gravik then transforms back to his original self, and then we know that it's Gravik, and then of course Gravik ends up stabbing Talos, delivering the final blow, actually killing Talos. And like I said, it's just devastating, because when you really think about it, at this point, as far as I know, Gravik does not know that Gaia is still alive. So for all Gravik knows, he actually killed Gaia and also Gaia's father, Talos. So it really gives you an idea of just how cold Gravik is. He's not just willing to kill all the humans, he's willing to kill his own Skrulls as well. And it just gives us an idea of just how far he's willing to go to win this war, to win this battle, to really win this, what we call, secret invasion. But all in all, there's some really beautiful shots here in this action sequence, especially with the camera work. There's one really cool scene where the camera is sort of overlooking the battlefield. You see all the fallen soldiers, and there's like this car burning. You see, Fury trying to walk away with the president, trying to save the president. He has this specialized armor vehicle that he's going to put the president in. And then we actually get to the devastating scene then, when we learn that the soldier that picks up Talos is actually Gravik. Now, we already just briefly talked about that, but I have the episode playing through here now, so that, I just sort of talked about it before it actually happens. But as soon as he stopped there, we knew then that this was not going to end good for Talos. And Fury knows this as well, because Fury pulls the gun when he sees the soldier stopping in the middle of the battlefield with Talos, and he actually shoots the Skrull, but it turns out that it's Gravik, so obviously the bullets basically has no effect on Gravik, because now he's a Super Skrull, which means he has Extremis, which means he's able to actually heal. But we do get this just menacing scene, almost hard to watch really, where Fury actually shoots Gravik literally in the face, and it blows off a piece of his face, but he's able to heal because of the Extremis. but I have to say that it was a very dark tone. It was very gory. This series is actually very gory, considering that it's a Disney Plus series, because in a previous episode we seen a Skrull getting their finger cut off, but they got their finger cut off while actually being in their human form, so it actually looked like a human hand and not the alien hand. But there really is some brutal gory shots in this episode. But of course, Fury is forced to leave, and he has to leave Talos and Talos's body here on the battlefield. So it's just really devastating to see that. Now, having said that, nobody really checks on Talos, so I guess it is still a small possibility that he could survive. I mean, I really doubt that he's going to survive, but it's not totally out of the question, given the fact that, it never really focuses on Talos anymore. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, they don't ever zoom in on him again, and whatnot. So it's really, I guess, it's still up in the air. I guess technically Talos could survive, but it's very unlikely. I do think that he's going to die, and I also think that this gives more motivation for Gaia and her character and Emilia Clarke to move forward and continue forward with the Skrull storyline. Obviously, she's going to be very important to the future episodes. She is going to be a pinnacle point of the invasion, and she absolutely will team up with Fury, and which is a good thing, because she's a Super Skrull too, so she has the actual abilities basically of the Fantastic Four all in one, and I do think that Fury will greatly benefit from her and whatnot. I do think that Priscilla will survive towards the end of this as well. I can't see Fury truly killing her. Now, I don't think that they're going to stay married. Not for a second. The marriage, the marriage thing is definitely over. But I would be surprised if he actually killed her, if he actually wanted to put her down. I just can't see Fury doing that. It's not really in the characteristics of Fury. Like, I don't think he'll put her to jail. Which is another thing that I'm really curious to see about the end of Secret Invasion. How are they going to clean it up? What do you do with the Skrulls? Are they going to ship them all away? Are they going to somehow create a technology that allows them to identify who's Skrull and who's not Skrull? Which would be interesting now that I'm thinking about it. Wouldn't it be cool if they developed a technology that would be able to identify the Skrulls, the difference between Skrulls and the humans, and then later on in phase 6, 7, 8, or 9, when the mutants are actually introduced, then they end up, turning that over sort of to Trask Industries, where that same technology that they use to try to differentiate between humans and Skrulls is then used to differentiate humans and mutants. So I think that would be really cool. Now, I really don't think that Marvel is going to do that, but I'm just saying, wouldn't it be cool if, this little tiny series, Secret Invasion, would have such a huge impact in the future with the mutants, because maybe Secret Invasion could be sort of a way of making people sort of turn against the Skrulls, the same way that eventually they'll turn against the mutants, because we sort of seen that anyways with another Disney Plus series, which was in phase 4, Miss Marvel, with the DOCC damage, or was it DCOC or whatever it is, damage control, the DCC damage control, whatever they are, what the faction of the government they are, where they go around basically trying to clean up the mess from all these superhumans and superheroes and all these things. So they sort of already set it up where humanity is already turning against people that are like the Avengers. And plus, in the Avengers, after Age of Ultron, we got the Sokovia Accords. So we're already seeing humanity, this, sort of divide between, between the regular folk and then the superhuman folk. And now, of course, with Secret Invasion, now you have humans versus the aliens, the Skrulls, which I do think will eventually elude and become all these things combined. I mean, the Skrulls plus the Avengers plus the superhuman, the superheroes, all of these things are going to be the cause, I think, of the mutants and of the world end up eventually hating the mutants, because we know that the mutants, there's hundreds of thousands of mutants. There's literally, almost as many mutants, if not, maybe there is equal amount of mutants as what there are non-mutants. So I just think it would be really cool if in Secret Invasion they created that technology to a type of technology to differentiate normal folk from the Skrulls, from the superpowered, and then eventually in the future even from the mutants. So how cool would that be if they took that technology and then eventually introduced Trask, and then Trask took that technology that we had from the aliens or to detect aliens, and then sort of transitioned it to be able to detect mutants. Now I'm gone totally off off the rails here with this podcast. We hardly even talked about Secret Invasion. We're talking about all the MCU, the multiverse, the Skrulls, the mutants, the Fantastic Fours, and all these crazy cool ideas and projects. And who knows, maybe they will go that far. Maybe I do hope that Secret Invasion has a really big impact on Marvel overall. I would also be curious to see if this story will continue. How will it continue? Will there be just simply a season 2 of Secret Invasion, or would they actually, have the Secret Invasion just carry on into the Disney Plus shows, and then eventually lead into a massive, Avengers level threat? I was saying in a previous podcast, wouldn't it be cool if Secret Invasion actually was really a prelude to Secret Wars, even though in the comics, Secret Wars is its own thing, which is really the Avengers versus Kang, and you would really be introduced to like the Kang dynasty, because we actually have an Avengers movie coming, which is actually going to be called Avengers Kang Dynasty. But wouldn't it be cool if we had, if Secret Wars was, rather than actually staying true to the comics of Secret Wars, if it was actually a continuation of Secret Invasion, and that was actually the war. It was between Skrulls and the superheroes, because really, when you think about it, they kind of could pull that off, because Secret Wars is really all the different universes fighting each other, and different different incarnations of the same hero. So you would have different versions of Iron Man fighting different versions of Iron Man. You would have different versions of Kang and basically different versions of all of our heroes fighting against each other to try to save their own universes, until eventually all the universes, I believe, are sort of, I think they ends up creating like a new timeline or something, where some universes are sacrificed, or actually I think most universes are sacrificed, and they end up solidifying the timeline, I think by either recreating a new timeline, or they do something anyways where they're able to save. It's been a long time since I actually read that comic, but I did read it. I can't quite remember how it's going to be. I was actually going to reread it, but I didn't want to now that they're doing it with the movies. I am going to reread it after the movies, but not before the movies, so I didn't want to spoil anything just in case they do stay true to some parts of the comic. But anyways, they could still sort of have Secret Invasion and Secret Wars sort of be a unique way of telling Secret Wars, rather than it be actually different universes fighting against each other. It would actually be our universe, or one universe, except we would have different incarnations of our heroes, because rather than being from different universes, they would actually be the Skrull. Now, I kind of hope they don't do that, but it would be cool if they did that. I think it would be fun to see a Skrull war, to see the Secret Invasion carry on beyond this one series, and actually overflow into other projects, into other chapters and other parts of the MCU. I still don't see how they can sum this up in 2 more episodes. Like I said, even if they eliminate Gravik, the threat is still there, and the threat is always going to be there. So they either would have to come to a peace agreement with the Skrulls, or they would have to, actually get rid of the Skrulls, or at the very least send them up to that spaceship or whatnot. Like, I just don't see how they can wrap this up in 2 episodes. So this story has to continue on somehow. So most likely there'll either be another series, another episode, or another season, sorry. There'll either be like a season 2 of Secret Invasion, or they'll have no choice but to overflow it. I did see some rumors online suggesting that maybe Armor Wars would be sort of like a continuation of Secret Invasion. I hope not, just because I don't want, Armor Wars is sort of its own thing. It's our first time really having like a quote-unquote, like an Iron Man type movie without Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. It's going to be all about Don Cheadle and his character, so I hope that it's not, the Skrull version of Rhodey. Like, I want it to actually be Rhodey, but I do think that Armor Wars would be a continuation of this one, in the sense that I do believe that at the end of this one, Fury and definitely Gaia and anyone else that they end up having as their on their team, as their alliance, they are going to have to rescue all the people that Gravik has kidnapped and taken over. That will also help them narrow down who they're looking for. So if they did not design a form of technology to pick out who the Skrulls were, then at the very least, if they find where all the humans are being kept, then they would know at least who their targets are, because they could wake up all the humans, and then they could just take and sort of like an inventory or do a tally or do like a census on the human, and then they would know who's who and who they need to look out for in the real world. So there's so many possibilities, and like I said, all of this is speculation. I don't have any inside knowledge or any inside information. It's all just speculation and theories and us theorizing. But that's the whole point of this podcast. It's an open spoiler discussion where we can talk about it in any form that we want. We can say what we want and talk about it in any way that we really want. And I absolutely love Secret Invasion. It's honestly one of my favorite things since Infinity War, since Endgame. This is one of my favorite post-Endgame projects, especially for the Disney Plus projects. I still think Loki is probably my favorite, or at the very least tied with WandaVision. I absolutely love WandaVision, and I do think Secret Invasion is right up there as well. I would say I like Secret Invasion probably more than Moon Knight. Even though I love Moon Knight too, but I do like this more than Moon Knight, definitely. And I like this more than most of the, I would say I like this as much as Miss Marvel, although I absolutely love Miss Marvel. Honestly, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, Miss Marvel is probably my favorite Disney Plus show, but I do like this one, I think, as much as Loki and whatnot. I like the political aspect. I like the fact that it's a small story that doesn't have any Avengers. That's one thing I feel like the MCU struggles from. It's so crowded. I feel like it struggles because it's almost too crowded and whatnot. But anyways, that is my that's my breakdown of Secret Invasion episode 4. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you're listening to this on our podcasting platforms, and don't be afraid to follow along. Click that follow button. If you're listening to this on our YouTube channel, then don't be afraid to click that subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. And then swap over. If you're on the channel, then check out the podcast, and if you're on the podcast, check out the channel and follow both and all the good stuff. And that's pretty well all I got for you. So let me know your thoughts, opinions, and theories down below. I hope you enjoyed my review and our breakdown and our theories and our interpretation on the multiverse and how we hope things go and how we like things and our predictions and all that good stuff. And let me know all the cool stuff. And that's pretty well all I got for you. So until the next one, take care.